Problems exist. The question is, how do you deal with them? And of course, which problem actually to define and which problem to define first and in which order? And are you actually dealing with the right aspect here? We have an expert on the matter with us here today. Hello and welcome, Kevin Diaz.
Hello, thanks for having me. Glad to
Thank
be
you so
here.
much for taking the time, and we get straight into it. You wrote the book, The Problem Method First, the Problem First Method. And my question, of course, in the beginning is, what motivated you to write this book right now? Because let's face it, most books, especially these motivational books, do not like to use the word problem. They say, oh, you have to start with challenge and don't be so problem focused. You go the other way around. What was your motivation to do so?
So I was struggling a little bit in my professional career where I was feeling these forces at work that were pushing our team to jump to solutions. And at first, I was having a hard time articulating what made it uncomfortable for me. And so a lot of the book was actually finally being able to articulate that, get it out, get into words. And what I found in the process of writing was these kind of hidden forces that, every team knows that they should be problem first. It's like Captain Obvious, start with the problem. You could go around to any product team on the planet. But, these really smart, capable teams, still ended up releasing these features that didn't stick. And we could trace that back to they had started with a problem that the user didn't have or was invented. And a lot of the themes I saw were themes that I was feeling in my daily work of there were these forces that were pushing teams to skip over this step.
Mm. So, I mean, let's face it, there are usually very educated people in these kind of task forces, groups, and you wonder how is it still possible in today's times that any kind of team starts with a problem where you say, hey, I think we got it, and here's the solution, and no one cares. Actually, no one cares. How can this still happen?
So I'll talk about a few things. So one, I think customers are much more sophisticated today than they were 10 or 15 years ago when I started in software. So 10 or 15 years ago, a customer would come to you with some ambiguous problem. They didn't even know if technology could help you. And that made it very easy to do that discovery step. Today,
Hmm.
customers are much more sophisticated. They're using hundreds of apps daily. They've seen good UX, they've seen bad UX. So they're coming to you with feature requests, with solutions like we want to export to Excel button here. We want SMS messaging. And it can be very easy for teams to kind of just fall into that and want to please them and jump to that instead of, stepping back and asking like, well, what are you going to do with that Excel file once you export it? How does it fit into your workflow? At the end of the day, that Excel button or SMS might be the answer. But if you don't really get to the discovery of understanding, what's the problem, what's driving them to ask for that, teams can skip that. Other things, competitive pressure. It can be, often the CEO or the board is saying like, hey, this company just launched this feature. Why don't we have it? Or, today with AI, we're on a board of 20 other companies and they're all AI first now. Why don't you guys be AI first?
Hmm.
Well, we could adopt AI, but like what is that going to do for our customer base? What problem is that solving? So there are these forces that are pushing teams to jump to that before they've really stepped back and understood that initial step.
Excellent. And especially this one point, because I mean, we probably all heard that statement. Look, why do you want it? Competitor has it. CEO read something in an industry magazine, saw something on a trade fair, saw a speech there. Oh, they have it, so we need it because they have it. Why do you think that this competitor has it is never a good enough reason to actually go for it?
One example that we saw, in our own world at Mbeki was, they came and they said, we're not going to be a real company until we have APIs because big healthcare tech companies always have APIs. And so, the whole team immediately kind of thought like, all right, well, we need an API. And we didn't like, then it was like, oh, can we step back and can we ask, well, what do we need an API for? And do our customers right now, like our ideal customer profile, do they need an API and what would they use that for? Uh, so again, like these these forces are pushing you to kind of jump to those solutions really early.
Mm. So one aspect, of course, we have to talk about. Let's say a customer tells you, I think this is the solution. And then sales probably tells you, look, when the customer says it, it's the easiest sale on planet Earth. We need this solution basically by tomorrow. If we're lucky, we can push to probably, I'll give you 2 days. Customer wants it, sales pushes for it. However, how, and probably, of course, maybe your personal skill set tells you, I think we can build this. So you say we can do it, sales pushes for it, customer wants it. How to then remain resilient and say, let's ask a couple of more questions because sales will pressure you and say, you're just putting yourself in the way of us making money, having a happy customer. Why do you do that? How to remain, how to hold that discipline?
Yeah, that is a great point. And so part of the book is about how do you set up a system at your company to do that. And it can be some small changes that can, really do that. But that was something that I found was it was the system, the culture was pushing us to, to give into that immediate sales pressure or to give into that immediate customer request. So as an example, PRDs, product requirement documents.
Yeah.
Those tend to be when you already have a feature or a solution in mind, and then you're fleshing out what the requirements of that should be. We did something that was a step before that at Ambiki, which we called a feature alignment document, and which was really about exploring the problem space. And the big change that we made, so when we first released that document 4 years ago, it had the problem at the bottom of the page. And we were still kind of running into this. And then we moved it right to the top. So it was the first thing that you had to write. It was the first thing you had to think about. It was the first thing the reader of the document had to read. And just that small change there made a big difference. Another small change, pulling solution language out of the problem. So if you can ask your team just in one sentence, like, what's the problem we're solving? A lot of times they'll try to sneak in solution language. Well, our customers ask for SMS, or our customer needs this export to Excel button. But can you describe that without talking about the solution at all? So forcing the team to make that small change can have a big impact. So it really was about setting up a lot of these small changes as thinking about the system of that at the company. Because if you're in the typical kind of forces are going to be pushing you more towards solutions. So you have to change things a little bit at the system level, how you're operating.
Excellent. Well, now people say, I think this might be a good read for me. What kind of read can readers expect from your book? Is it a scientific dealing with theories, or how is the book organized? And what kind of read can people expect when they buy your book?
Yeah, I'm a very story-driven person. So the book is split into 4 parts. Part 1 is stories from my own experience from large companies like Google and Air Canada of times that teams got it wrong, where they skipped over the problem. Part 2 is when teams got it right, when they started with the problem and how that worked and led to. Then part 3 are different templates and frameworks that we found successful at Ambiki to, again, like how can we set up a system that helps the team be problem first. And then step 4 is like where theory meets practice, like when it hits the road and when you get that tough question, as you said, like the sales team is ready to go if we just implement this one thing. The board is asking you, like, why does your team not have this AI feature yet? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you get them to say no? But again, overall, it's a very story-driven book. I feel like stories stick with people. So if you like an easy story-driven read, I think it would be for you.
Excellent. Perfect. So that means people can expect that when they read it, they get practical hands-on solutions right from the beginning so they can implement that immediately after reading it.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. One last question, of course. When people now say, I think Kevin might actually be a good pick probably for our next conference as a keynote speaker or as a trainer or a coach for us, how can people get in touch to wrap this interview up?
So the book is at problemfirstmethod.com. I also have my own personal site, kevinsdiaz.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I like to write there, often writing, posts and essays every week. So yeah, feel free to get in touch and say hi. I'm a friendly, easygoing guy.
Brilliant. So we see when you say, I think we know this situation where sales is pressuring us to do it, the client actually wants it, the customer wants it, and we think we can build it, and suddenly we see it didn't work out too well. This book is for you. So at the end of this podcast, at the end of the video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Kevin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.